The Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. While the Clean Water and Clean Air Acts address pollution sources to water and air, a large gap was evident, and that was the pollution of land and groundwater. The Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, or RCRA, was created to address the management of waste applied to land. Under RCRA, solid waste are broadly defined as discarded materials ranging from gases, liquids, semi-solids, and solids. The definitions are intended to capture all those materials that might pollute soils and groundwater if not properly treated and disposed. RCRA was passed in 1976, and it imposed the condition that generators of waste would be responsible for the management of RCRA-regulated waste from cradle to grave. That is, from the moment it is generated until the waste is treated and rendered non-toxic and disposed. And even here, there are certain long-term liabilities. The cradle-to-grave provisions impose much more liability and risk than previous environmental laws. RCRA was updated with the 1984 Hazardous and Solid Waste Amendments, or HAZWA. So, what constitutes a hazardous waste under RCRA? Well, wastes that are considered hazardous may possess a characteristic. They could be corrosive, ignitable, reactive, or toxic. Corrosive wastes have a pH of less than 2 or greater than 12.5 and can corrode metal containers. Ignitable waste can create fires under certain conditions, are spontaneously combustible, or have a flash point of 140 degrees Fahrenheit or less. Reactive wastes are unstable and can react violently when exposed to air or water. The original toxic waste list dealt with a handful of materials that contain concentrations of chemicals or an element in excess of an established level. For instance, all waste containing 5 or greater parts per million of chromium are considered toxic. There is a special test to determine if the hazardous component in a waste would leach out from this waste. This test is intended to replicate the conditions of a municipal landfill and to determine if a waste would pose a problem if disposed in such a landfill. This test method is known as the toxicity characteristic leachate procedure. The list of toxic waste was expanded with the 1984 HAZWA and is currently at 42 contaminants. There are also lists or categories of waste. The first list is based on waste from what's called non-specific sources. So these include spent halogenated solvents used in degreasing, including tetrachloroethylene, trichloroethylene, methylene chloride, 1,1,1-trichloroethane, carbon tetrachloride, and chlorinated fluorocarbons. The next list identifies waste from specific sources, such as wastewater treatment sludge from the production of zinc yellow pigments. A third set of waste includes commercial and chemical products that, when discarded, are categorized as waste. There are sub-lists, one for chemicals considered acutely hazardous, or the P list, such as dieldrin and potassium cyanide, and the U list for chemicals identified as toxic, such as creosote and methylene chloride. Spills of those products and the subsequent cleanup materials are considered hazardous waste, as well as residues in containers. RCRA also imposed many requirements on waste generators, especially those that produce over 2,200 pounds per month. Although waste generators do not require a permit to produce waste, they must obtain an identification number from the EPA prior to producing any regulated waste. Generators must abide by all the applicable requirements. These requirements include storing waste for no more than 90 days, and the accumulation clock begins the moment the first drop of waste is placed in the container, weekly inspection of the waste containers, training for personnel, creating a documented emergency spill response program, emergency notification systems, such as sirens, lights, horns, etc., where the wastes are stored, marking the containers with the phrase hazardous waste, maintaining adequate aisle space between containers to allow emergency response personnel adequate access, and posting signs where the waste is stored warning of the presence of hazardous waste. Transporters of hazardous waste through the air, rail, highway, or water are subject to RCRA requirements as well. All waste shipments must include shipping papers that serve as a tracking system for the waste. A manifest must be returned to the generator after it reaches its destination and cannot exceed 35 days. Failure to receive a manifest within this time frame requires notification to the EPA. Permits are required for facilities that receive, treat, and dispose of hazardous waste. These permits are expensive to obtain and are very complex, with detailed requirements on how waste must be treated and disposed. The facilities that treat and dispose of hazardous waste must have adequate insurance and assist to prevent the public from exposure to the waste. With the 1984 HASWA, disposal facilities could no longer place waste into landfills until they were treated to standards that made the waste non-toxic. As the title implies, the intent of the Act is to conserve and to reduce the amount of waste generated. There are exemptions in the Act for items that are recycled or reused. Waste oil is not a recurrent waste as long as it is properly recycled. All those that generate waste must certify in each waste shipment that they have a program in place to reduce both the amount and toxicity of waste generated.